All right, good morning, team. We are very excited to welcome you today to our THL webinar. I am Jennifer Aguirre. I'm the Director of Open Education Resources and a former high school English teacher, and really excited to be presenting to you today. We are launching our K-5 English and Spanish language arts reading materials. I'm so really excited to dig in with you and preview Unit 1. As a reminder, you can use both the Q&A and chat features and leave any questions you have there, and we will work to answer them as we go. We want to start with just an overview of THL implementation webinar series. Again, I think these first few slides will look very familiar to a lot of folks. We started with a webinar on adapting and adopting remote curriculum. Today, we'll be diving into the product-specific adoption of our K-5 English and Spanish language arts content. And then please be on the lookout for more information, including our series to support adoption and technology supports. Our webinar objectives today are to review Texas Home Learning 3.0 frequently asked questions, explore the Amplify Texas Elementary Literacy Release materials, and share when and where you can access the materials for review and instruction. Additional reminders, THL 3.0 is an optional aligned suite of resources. It consists of 3 major components: instructional materials, technology, and professional development. Districts can, of course, optionally adopt none, part, or all of the 3 components listed above. Additional reminder around our technology offering is that Schoology is the LMS that has been purchased on behalf of TEA. 400 districts have already signed up. TEA has negotiated a 2-year statewide license for Schoology for any interested LEAs. And if you want more information here, please go to powerschool.com Texas, or you can find additional information through the Texas Home Learning website. Today's focus, again, is on instructional materials offerings in K-5 English and Spanish language arts and reading. All instructional materials have been selected through a competitive solicitation process based on ability of publisher to develop high-quality, TEKS-aligned instructional materials designed for flexibility in this new learning environment and accessible to all learners. Really want to emphasize here that no off-the-shelf curriculum is built for this unprecedented nature that we currently find ourselves in, and that is why THL is a new curriculum and not all available all at once. So I know a couple of people have had lots of questions around when will materials be ready, when can we see the full year of materials, and just want to stamp that materials are currently being released on a rolling basis, and we'll talk more about that throughout the course of this session. Additionally, the Texas teachers are involved in the review process before the release of each set of materials, and continuous improvements will be made to the materials informed by feedback from Texas teachers and other key stakeholders. To date, 7 THL 3.0 instructional material products have been announced. Pre-kinder, K-2 SLR skills, and K-5 social studies are coming soon, but this slide gives you a good indication of where we are in our THL release. And again, today we'll be focusing on K-5 English and Spanish language arts and reading. So I'll leave this slide up for just a few seconds so folks can digest this because this is a new slide that's just intending to, again, give some roll-up information on when materials will be available. All right, so a couple of frequently asked questions as we dive into our K-5 language arts products. One, will the THL 3.0 scope and sequence align to the TEKS resource system scope and sequence? And do I need Schoology to use Texas Home Learning 3.0 instructional materials? So again, as a reminder, THL and the TEKS resource system are 2 distinct and separate curricular products, both of which include a scope and sequence aligned to the TEKS. The THL product scope and sequence are strategically designed and unique to the materials. Therefore, they are not aligned to the TEKS resource scope and sequence. Mixing and adopting the THL product scope and sequence and associated lessons is not recommended, given they are intentionally ordered to build on one another. We have our Amplify team here today, and they are going to talk a little bit about the science of reading and the way in which the content does build on each other. And so I think this bullet point becomes especially important given the product that we're going to be looking at today. And then Texas Home Learning products will include a recommendation for how to follow the scope and sequence if adopting after the start of the school year. Do I need Schoology? So no, districts will be able to access these resources in a variety of ways. Certainly you can access and use through Schoology and or Canvas. Districts can access the resources through LTI code that will allow them to integrate resources into another LMS if using something other than Schoology. And you do not need an LMS to access the resources covered in today's webinar. So one of the things our Amplify team is going to do is they're going to share with us the site that they have set up where materials can be accessed straight from a site as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Amplify team. And I will let Susan introduce herself and kick us off by launching our K-5 materials.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Susan, thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for that. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Lambert. I do work at Amplify. I'm the Vice President of Early Literacy Instruction. Really excited to join you today. And I realize that I'm standing between you and Jamie Klistic, who is going to be introducing you and doing a walkthrough of the site. But I really want to talk a little bit about the science of reading and what Amplify Texas literacy products that are grounded in the science of reading, what does that mean for you? And so let's talk first about Scarborough's rope. And I think that you actually saw this if you were on the last webinar. This is really the visualization or basis for what we mean by the science of reading. So two things: we know kids need to be able to lift the print off the page. We call that word recognition. And that's all about developing then sounds in print and the skills to decode words. We also know that kids need language comprehension to develop. And we're going to talk a little bit about why this is so important in terms of oral language. First of all, I want to let you know that it looks like these two things are very disconnected at the beginning of a learner's experience. And what we know from research is that when you build strong language comprehension, and kids have that and are developing that, it actually helps them with the decoding and the mapping process needed for word recognition. So language comprehension is really, really important. So important that it is an actually success indicator for reading comprehension. And when we talk about this idea of oral comprehension, the idea here is that kids come to us at the beginning of school with a naturally developing language comprehension. That means we don't have to teach kids how to listen and how to speak, right? It's just something that starts to develop naturally. And when they come to us, actually, you'll notice on this graph, when they come to us as early learners, if you see the ages of kids along the bottom, what we do know is that their listening comprehension actually outpaces their reading comprehension. And this sort of makes sense if we think about it. So in grade, when they're 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, that's when we're teaching them these decoding process, right? Like how sounds map to the letters in print and how we lift that print off the page. But if you look at these bars, you can see that sort of greenish, bluish bar at the age of 1 all the way up to age 13, it actually outpaces how we're developing in our reading comprehension. And what we want to do is we want to actually leverage that to help kids gain more background knowledge and gain more vocabulary. And you'll notice that listening comprehension actually starts to match up with reading comprehension about middle school, when we're nearing the end of middle school. And so you'll see through the Amplify Texas materials that we gradually then decrease the amount of read alouds kids have over time. So when they're in the K2 experience, they're going to get lots of read alouds. And this is important, like I said, to develop that background knowledge and language comprehension. And then when we move into grades 3 through 5, they're going to take that information, background knowledge, vocabulary, and integrate that into print in order to become more strategic in terms of how they're interacting with print, both in the reading and the writing environment. And so over time, then this program will actually help build that. Why is that important? Well, what we know is when oral language is strong, reading comprehension is strong. And for those of you that know about correlations, it's almost a perfect correlation, which means that any incremental development or increase in oral language in the early grades and throughout will actually transfer into reading comprehension. And because they're so positively matched, it's super important for us to help kids develop this. So how are we going to do that in the program materials? Well, when you look at overall from kindergarten through grade 5, we have this great development of broad background knowledge to get to kids both ideas, concepts, and vocabulary that gives them the breadth of knowledge or the breadth of language comprehension, if you will, that will actually help them dive into text more deeply and dive into their reading more deeply. And so I think you've seen this already of the connections that we have between kindergarten all the way through grade 5 as it relates to the ELA content. Well, when we're in the grade level, in order to actually go deep in terms of our coherent knowledge development, you will also see that we have connections within a grade. So this is an example of kindergarten where they're going to be introduced to the concepts of plants. And in that unit or that domain, they'll get background knowledge and vocabulary and start to make connections. And then they're going to move to a domain that's all about farms. And you can already anticipate that some of the vocabulary that they've used in the plant unit, they're also going to use in that farm unit. And so we're starting then to build a really big semantic web within the grade. And then when we get across the grades, we're going to do the same thing. And what this does then is it helps kids use concepts, content in different contexts so that they can deepen then their understanding of topics. They can deepen their interaction in terms of reading, writing, and speaking and listening. And then this helps them then transfer that comprehension or that understanding. And so as we start to dig into these program materials, I really, it's a different approach to ELA instruction, but understanding that language comprehension is an essential element and a knowledge-rich curriculum will help students then develop that background knowledge, that vocabulary, then that helps them be really strong comprehenders in their reading. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to Jamie Klistic, who is going to help you dive deeply into the program materials themselves. Jamie? Jamie, if you are there, we can't hear you.
Okay, I think you can hear me now.
We can.
Wonderful. I was here all along. Thank you so much, Susan, for that wonderful reminder of all of the amazing rich knowledge and background that our students are going to be receiving through the use of the program. So Susan mentioned earlier today that I am here to share with you some of the materials and to visit the site to be able to check out some of the great materials that you're going to have at your fingertips to use with your students across the state. So I'm so happy to be here with you today. My name is Jamie Klistic, and I do work on the Amplify team. I work as an associate director of professional development partnerships. So I'm working across the country with schools around implementation. So it is my absolute pleasure to be here with all of you this morning and to figure out a little bit more about the Texas Home Learning Site and all of the great materials that you have at your fingertips right now. So just to let you know, we're going to visit the site. We're going to go live and check out what the site looks like and how you can access materials and what your students will have available and what teachers will have available, and some great resources that we've also put together for families. But before we do that, we wanted just to help you get acclimated a little bit with some of the materials that you're going to see on this site. So the next couple slides will just do that. We'll start to figure out what do the materials for kindergarten through second grade look like, what do the materials look like for third through fifth grade, and then also some distinctions between the ELAR and the SLAR materials. So when we visit the site in a little bit, this is going to give you sort of a lay of the land of what you're going to see. You're going to see it's organized very simply. You're going to see on the left-hand side that we're organized by grade levels. So you'll see kindergarten all the way through fifth grade. When we navigate to the site, you'll see that you can click directly on that grade and it will take you to all of the materials, or you can scroll through the site to go grade by grade. Once we do get to your individual grade level, I have an example here from third grade. You'll see that it is laid out the exact same way, kindergarten through fifth grade. So you're going to see an opportunity for all of your ELR teacher resources to be in one place, all of your ELR student resources to be in one place, the SLR teacher resources, the SLR student resources, and then some planning resources that we have created as well to help you start to navigate the program materials and the entire program itself. So really easy to navigate, really easy to sort of figure out what you need for grade level materials for both teachers and students in both the ELR programs and the SLR programs. So I wanted to start off in sharing with you just some ideas of what some of the materials will look like. So we're going to spend a little bit of time first in K2, specific to the Skills Strand. So this Skills Strand is where we're really addressing those foundational reading skills in explicit and systematic phonics. You'll see here I have a couple examples of what teachers would see in their teacher resources. So this example here on the left is what we're calling our K2 experience. This is actually a resource that's found in your Unit 1 teacher guide. It gives your kindergarten, first and second grade teachers an extremely simple overview of what happens in terms of instruction across the units, within the grade, and then also across grades. So it's a really great example of just a resource that teachers have in order to understand where their footprint lands within the Skills Strand explicit instruction within their grade level, and then also across that K2 grade level band. This middle image here is an example that you're going to see in every teacher guide for each unit in skills. We have a lesson at a glance, which is just a simple overview of what each lesson would include. So you'll see all of the different foundational skills components that are included within that lesson, recommended groupings, suggested number of minutes that that lesson component would take to accomplish for that daily lesson, and then materials that you would need in order to execute that lesson. And then you'll also see here on the right-hand side, also part of the teacher guide, this is just an example of a lesson overview. So each lesson starts just like this. You'll see the primary focus of the lesson. You'll notice that all of the primary focuses are aligned to TEKS. So you can have that standards alignment. And you'll also always see the opportunity for formative assessments called out on that first page of your every single day lesson. So just wanted you to become a little bit acquainted with what teachers will start to see in their teacher guides for the Skills Strand. In terms of student resources, your students are going to have access to a lot of different resources as well. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, this beautifully imaged student reader. Students not only are getting provided a lot of explicit instruction around foundational skills, but they take those skills and they are then taking them straight into a reader. So we're connecting text to the skills that they're reading. So this is an example from second grade, Unit 1, the CAP Bandit. You'll see that the the reader that the students will experience is going to directly align back to the skills that they are addressing within that Unit 1 in grade 2. So wonderful opportunities for students to not only connect to text, but also connect those skills back to text, which is so important. The other examples on the slide here you'll see are a couple examples of what can be found in a student activity book. So this middle slide or example here, 2.1 and 2.2, that is just an example from one of the student activity book pages. One is a take-home, so students have an opportunity to take home reading to continue to apply those skills and practice those skills that they have been explicitly working on in class. And then you'll see that this 2.2 is actually an activity book page that they would complete in class. So there'll be some application at home, an opportunity to practice skills and to get ready for what's coming in the next day in class with some the activity book page that connects back to that text. So you'll see a lot of examples like that whenever we look at the student activity books on the website. And then another example of an activity book page here that's addressing some of those foundational skills. So you'll see a lot of different opportunities for students, one, to engage within what they're practicing in class, to apply with what they're doing in day-to-day lessons, and then with the readers going straight back into text, connecting to the skills that they are learning about and executing every day in class. So we're going to stay in kindergarten through 2nd grade for a little bit longer, and we're going to focus on the Knowledge Strand next. The Knowledge Strand is an amazing opportunity for students really to build that world and word knowledge. So we're building background through opportunities that involve comprehension, opportunities for vocabulary and language acquisition, opportunities for students to have experiences and exposures with complex text, and then obviously honing in on those speaking and listening skills. You'll see here that we have an example of the teacher guide. So thinking back to that skills teacher guide, this should look familiar. They have a very similar feel for the purpose of ease of teacher use. The teacher guide for all of the Knowledge Strand lessons will look just this way, similar to skills. The primary focus of the lesson, those objectives that are aligned to your TEAC standards, and opportunities for formative assessments are always called out first thing within their teacher guide lessons. They'll have that opportunity for lessons at a glance within every single lesson. So it'll break through the 60 minutes of the Knowledge Strand of what happens with the read aloud, what happens with word work within the read aloud, the comprehension that's connected there, the suggested groupings, the suggested number of minutes, and materials that they would need. And then there's always the second part of the Knowledge Strand. So after the read aloud is the application. So allowing students to now then apply those skills that they have been working on back into an opportunity that's connected to the read aloud text. So really important, and some take home material as well. You'll see here I called out, I wanted to showcase a few things from the Knowledge Strand, with the Knowledge Strand being such a focus on listening and comprehension through listening. We also really work hard to make sure that students have multiple opportunities to expand their core vocabulary. So vocabulary is a huge part of the Knowledge Strand as we are acquiring additional language and vocabulary opportunities that connect back to those listening read alouds that they're going to have an experience with. And then this page over here in the teacher guide that you see here on the right-hand side, just did a quick example of what that would look like. The read aloud stories in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade are narrated for the teachers in the teacher guide. Teachers will have an opportunity to have embedded questions built within the read aloud. They will also have the opportunity to have the vocabulary that is connected to the read aloud highlighted in additional questions to expand students' opportunities with vocabulary within the read aloud, and obviously connections to the read aloud to these rich, amazing read aloud text that students will see in forms of images. So you'll see an example here from The Fisherman and His Wife, which is the first read aloud here for this grade. And so this is an example of one of the images that the teachers will have access to, a digital electronic flipbook And they will also have access to a recorded read aloud. So teachers will have the opportunity to not only have the read aloud text within their teacher guide and their digital flip books, but they also will have the same experience in a recorded read aloud if they chose to use it that way as well. So wonderful, rich experience for both teachers and especially our students in K2 within the Knowledge Strand, and all of these materials that the teachers will have access to. You'll also see here, I wanted to call out just a couple examples of that Knowledge Strand and how it relates to students. Students within the Knowledge Strand do have an activity book that is accompanies that strand. So they will have opportunities to have different activity book pages that connect to their lesson. They may use some of those activity book pages in their application parts of that 60-minute Knowledge Strand block of time. And some of those activity book pages would be things that would be take-home work as well. So they will have access to all of those files, and I will show those to you whenever we get to the site. And then I just put a quick screenshot here of, this was actually from one of the recorded read alouds. And so the recorded read alouds are all links that connect to YouTube that you will have access to from this site. So wonderful resource for students, especially students who might find themselves in a remote learning or an opportunity where they would be able to listen to the read aloud more than one time. If the teacher is reading it to the class, they would have opportunities to have that read aloud as it's recorded and listen to it as many times as they need. We also wanted to showcase that the K2 Knowledge Strand that we've been talking about has a wealth of resources that are also available in SLAR. So all of the ELAR materials that I just shared with you, the teacher guide, the student activity book pages, the recorded read alouds, all of the materials that we have in ELAR for teachers and students for the Knowledge Strand in K2 have the same reciprocal materials available to you for SLAR purposes. We're really excited to be able to provide that opportunity not only for all of our ELAR students, but then also SLAR students and SLAR teachers. And so these are just a couple examples for you to see of what that looks like in terms of the SLAR materials, from the student activity book pages, from the teacher guides, the lesson overviews, the primary focus objectives, the vocabulary portion of the teacher guide, and then just an example of an image from one of the recorded read alouds that is available for SLAR as well. Okay, we are going to shift gears to 3rd through 5th grade. So we wanted to talk to you a little bit about and share with you some of the great materials that we have for our integrated strand. So we've taken the 2 strands from K2, that Skills Strand of 60 minutes and the Knowledge Strand of 60 minutes, and now we've combined those into one integrated strand. And within that integrated strand, we're working really closely to help students understand and help teachers understand that we are moving fluidly between all of the domains, between reading and writing, speaking, listening, and language activities. So I just wanted to call out a couple things that you'll see in your materials for your 3rd through 5th grade teachers. You will see that the format is very similar, and for consistency purposes and for planning purposes across grade levels, this becomes really helpful, especially when implementing across to school and implementing across to district largely. You'll see that there is a table of contents that also includes all of the individual lessons. So it's a high-level overview of what's to come in that unit. We drill down to that individual lesson, so each lesson addressing the primary focus objectives, formative assessments, and then that lesson at a glance, which is building out within that lesson what components are being explicitly taught that day and practiced and reinforced, groupings, timing, and then also materials that would be needed in order to execute that lesson. Also wanted to showcase some of the student materials for 3rd through 5th grade. And so you'll see that just like our K2 skills that have student readers, our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students also have an opportunity to have those readers that are directly connected to their units, that directly connect them back to text, that they are then reinforcing skills that are being taught and reinforced throughout their daily lessons. And so you'll see an example here from 5th grade, Unit 1 of what one of the early chapters of 5th grade looks like with the Early American Civilizations unit. In the middle there, you'll see a couple of examples, and I did this sort of side by side so you can see there's going to be 2 different versions of the student activity book. So this is an activity book page from 5th grade that students would have the opportunity to engage with and complete in class. But the example on the right-hand side is actually, and it might be sort of hard to see, it's sort of a highlighted bluish purple field here throughout. These are then editable activity book pages, so students can type directly in there. So in this digital and remote world that we're finding ourselves continuing to be such a part of and having access to digital and electronic materials, this will make an ease of access for students to be able to not worry about having something in print in front of them, because they will have the ability to complete the activity book pages in an editable form for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in that integrated strand. So really happy to be able to provide that for you, and hopefully that will be a huge help as you're starting to think about how you can use these materials with your students. And then another example of an activity book page that was a take-home practice, as you can see, subject and predicate from a grammar lesson that students had experienced explicit instruction of that content and of that subject during their class, and then some opportunities for application and practice at home. I also wanted to share with you that in addition to the wonderful 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade ELAR materials, we also have 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade SLAR materials available for all of the teachers and students. And so just a couple examples of what that looked like in terms of the student reader, the teacher guide, and then an example of a student activity book page. So these materials not only are available for our English language arts, but also our Spanish language arts for teachers and students. Okay, so I think this is the part that we probably have been waiting for. We're going to navigate to the site, and so I'm going to share my screen. So if you give me just a second, and we'll get ourselves acclimated and get access to the site. And while I'm getting there, we're really excited to be able to showcase what the site looks like. Hopefully everybody is seeing my screen at this point. And it should start to look familiar based on some of the information that I shared with you in the earlier slides around the microsite. So you'll see it's just this welcome landing page that you're going to travel to. On the left-hand side, all of those grade level materials here. And then you'll see as you scroll down, all of the different grade levels with, like we called out, the ELAR, teacher student materials, SLAR, teacher student materials, and then some planning resources. So you can scroll through the page. All grades K through 5 are on one page. I'm going to navigate to 2nd grade just to start because I want to acclimate you of what happens whenever you get into a grade level. So like I said, you can scroll through and get to the grade that you need to, or if I wanted just to click on an individual grade here, it would then directly take me to that individual grade level. So let's get back to 2nd grade here. And I'm going to just show a couple things. Hopefully the information that I shared with you on some of the slides started to acclimate you with what some of those materials would look like for teachers and students. And so wanted just to share with you that when you do navigate to your grade level, that drop down or that arrow will drop you down into all of the resources that you would have for 2nd grade. And so you can see here that I have my skills information. So skills unit 1 is live and ready to go and ready to be explored. The teacher guide is here, as well as some digital components for you. the knowledge domain, unit 1, so it's fairy tales and tall tales. All the information I shared with you, that teacher guide is here, the digital flip book is here for you for that read aloud purposes, some additional components, trade books, and that read aloud video is here for you as well. So that read aloud video, this link will take you directly into YouTube for that recorded read aloud that we have available for you to use as well. You'll also see that there's some additional materials that I didn't preview, and so I just wanted to talk very quickly about some of them so that way you have an understanding of what is available. We have a great addition for all the Texas home learners that's called the Vocabulary Toolkit, and so it's additional lessons that run across all of the grades for teachers to use. So these are already sort of pre-made, built out lessons that can be some additional supplemental vocabulary lessons. You'll also see that there's a bunch of different materials here. So we've got some ancillary materials. I'm going to show you one of them just so you can have an idea of what some of these are. But I'm going to open up the consonant flip book. And so the consonant flip book is part of the skills program that teachers in 1st and 2nd grade will have access to. And so you see that there's some directions of how this is used. And just so you know, there are also directions that are right in the teacher guide. So any materials that you're going to see on this site will be explicitly spelled out in the teacher guide, so teachers will understand how to navigate between their teacher guide and some of these digital materials that they have access to. But you can see here that this consonant flipbook is reinforcing explicit instruction around sounds and code knowledge that are being taught within those skills lessons. So just an example of one of the additional components that you will have available to on this microsite as well. Let's take a look. One thing I didn't mention to you in our slides was we've worked really hard to provide some caregiver supports. And so I'm going to show you what this looks like. The caregiver supports are complete for all of the K2 domains. So domain 1, they will be continued to be added. So all the domains that you will be using in terms of instruction with your class, you will have these caregiver supports to send home and to share with families as well. And these are really meant to provide an overview for families of what their students are learning about, what they can expect over the next few weeks, some of the topics that are going to be addressed, some of the specific skills that they're going to be working on within these knowledge domains, and then some great questions and suggestions for families if they want to continue to engage their students in the learning that's happening. So that connection to home and school is provided in these caregiver supports, which we think are super important. So that is an example of some of the ELAR teacher resources. I want to take a look just quickly at the SLAR teacher resources, just so you can see that that we have the same materials. You have your knowledge, the teacher guide, you've got all the digital components, the read aloud link that connects to YouTube, that recorded read aloud that is available in SLAR as well. I also wanted to call out that we have some remote learning guide supports. We know that obviously right now we are still faced with lots of different challenges and lots of different learning environments. And so Amplify has created some remote learning guidance for teachers to help make some decisions around instructional priorities. And so you can see that this document links you to some decisions and some guidance that Amplify has created around how to address K2 remote learning supports, how to address 3-5 remote learning supports, specific to K2, how to address some of these and some recommendations around what we're recommending for knowledge and what we're recommending for skills. So we hope that this will be helpful for you as you start to sort of, 1, digest all of these materials, and then also 2, if you are faced with some remote learning environments, how you can continue to use these materials in a way that supports remote learning. Okay, and I think one of the last things I just wanted to call out on the site is just at this very top, and I skipped it. I went straight into the grade level material, but obviously there's a welcome section here. There's a welcome section here that is meant for obviously all of you as educators that are using it, but it's also really meant for our families. So families of students who are going to be engaging in these wonderful materials. And so I'm just going to open it. As you can see, it was available in English and Spanish. It really provides an overview of the vision of the program, how the program works, and then some of the specifics around the skills and knowledge and how that integrated strand. And so what students are really learning and the purpose of K-5 comprehensive English language arts programs and Spanish language arts program. And so we wanted to make sure to call that out to let you know that that is there, that's included for you as a resource that will, one, hopefully help all of you become even more acquainted to the program materials, but then also knowing that we have a welcome letter available to our families who are going to be hopefully engaging right alongside all of you as educators and their students in these wonderful program materials. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I hope that the information that I've provided you around the materials and getting acclimated on the site has been helpful. We're super thrilled for you to begin to explore all of these amazing resources in terms of K-5 ELAR and SLAR. And we can't wait to get feedback from all of you around how these materials are going to help continue making the biggest impact for your students across this school year.
Thank you so much, Jamie. We really appreciate it. We know we have a couple of questions that have been coming in. We're want to preview one additional section, which is I'm going to invite Elizabeth Ryder, who is a project lead working on the both Texas Home Learning and Open Education team to share with us a bit more about opportunities for the English and Spanish materials use. And then we're going to go ahead and tackle some product specific questions. So please continue to leave your questions in the Q&A and we're going to get to those in just a minute. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Libby.
Thank you so much, Jen. Good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with all of you this morning. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more about how the product that we're introducing to you all today works across programs that support emergent bilingual students in Texas. So I'm going to just elaborate a little bit on some of the features that Jamie shared with you all in regards to the K-5 knowledge units and how they can support any language model. Can you go to the next slide, please? So first, I want to make sure to highlight the supports that are embedded in every knowledge unit and lesson that would work really well for their ESL programs across the states. So I've got a couple of examples here, but basically you can see there are scaffolds for language learners that are built into almost every lesson in the knowledge program. There are prompts and activities that are aligned to the ELPs. And as Jamie mentioned, the resources are image rich and also include read aloud videos to enhance comprehension for students that are learning English. There's also explicit instruction and vocabulary words, which we know is so important in ESL programs that support our emergent bilingual students. Next slide, please. I also want to talk to you a little bit about how the materials can be implemented with a bilingual or dual language program. So we know across the state, programs are working in kind of a spectrum of language allocation from 90-10 all the way through 50-50, kind of depending on how the district or the individual school approaches bilingual or dual language programs. Here I've just tried to share a couple of ideas of ways that the structure of the program can be used in those types of allocations. So in 90-10, teachers and schools can focus on the lectoescritura program for their primary Spanish reading instruction. And they can also try incorporating some English skills practice units or using the English flipbook or image cards during their oral language time. We can also see how these resources can be used all the way through a 50-50 bilingual or dual language program, where English and Spanish teachers can alternate teaching units or divide lessons across the unit so students see the content in both languages. There's a lot of opportunities for bridging the content between language as students build their knowledge around these topics and themes. Something else that's really great about these units is the opportunity for collaboration among English and Spanish or ESL and bilingual teachers. So we know that oftentimes in Texas schools, we'll have like a bilingual or a dual language strand within a school or grade level. So you might see a grade level with 1 to 2 English or ESL classrooms and 1 to 2 bilingual or dual language classrooms. So these materials provide a lot of opportunity for teachers to continue to collaborate across the grade level, even though they're teaching in different languages, which we know is so important for teachers and for their sustainability. There's also opportunities with the way these knowledge units are designed for teachers to build excitement about the knowledge themes across the unit or across the grade level, even though the team might be teaching in different languages. Everyone would be studying, for example, early American civilizations at the same time. So we can build a lot of investment and excitement in the same topics, even though we might be seeing something in different languages. I also want to highlight our approach to creating these K-5 Spanish units in particular. So we have worked with a really great team, a really great content team, to mostly adapt these units from English into Spanish. So we are working with native Spanish speakers from all over the Spanish-speaking world who have worked to make these materials function and accessible for students whose native language is also Spanish. So that might mean having a strong lens on how a grammar lesson taught in English would actually work in Spanish, not just be directly translated, right? We also have incorporated authentic Spanish texts as often as we can. So for example, in kindergarten, you're gonna see that the fables and nursery rhymes are not just translations of the English versions, right? We've actually sourced fables and nursery rhymes from across the Spanish-speaking world to make that unit of study really authentic for our kindergartners. So really happy to have the opportunity to talk to you all this morning about how these resources work in our ESL, bilingual, and dual language programs across the state and support our emergent bilingual students. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jen and the team from Amplify to answer questions and close us out for the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Libby. Just gonna do a couple of quick announcements around materials access and upcoming webinars, and then would definitely love to open it up to questions and address some of the questions we've seen both in the chat and the Q&A. So I know many of you are wondering where you can find these resources and access them. These materials can be found, of course, through the Texas Home Learning website or through amplify.com THL 2020-2021. So feel welcome to access these resources through those two avenues. Upcoming materials. So again, because materials are being developed for THL, they will be released this year on a rolling basis. Unit 1 across K-5 English and Spanish is released today. Please expect Unit 2 to be tentatively released on October 27th, followed by the release cadence of Units 3 and 4 that you see over on the right. Again, we do want to stamp that the release dates of materials do depend on the successful completion of the THL review process. Reminder that instructional materials are posted on vendor websites and linked through texashomelearning.org. Upcoming webinars are promoted on texashomelearning.org. And then coming soon, again, our information on integrated pre-kinder, K-2 Spanish language arts skills, and K-5 social studies. Additionally, we'll be offering sort of implementation and adoption webinar series for Amplify Texas specifically. So be on the lookout for more information there. And then just a reminder that you can always visit Texas Home Learning for additional information to review products, to stay in the loop about upcoming events and webinars, to access product-specific landing pages, and to register for upcoming trainings. Okay, so with that, we're really excited to open it up to questions. We've had lots of good questions come through both the chat and the Q&A. So I want to start just very quickly. I think Jessica asked, are these published in terms of the materials, the readers for K through 5? Jessica asked, are they published authors, or are they works created by commissioned works for Texas Home Learning, which I think is a great question. And so I want to just say on behalf of, I think the Amplify team noted that these are a mix of publisher authors and original texts. And so you'll see a mixture of both of those things. And then somebody did ask, can districts purchase the activity books, or do districts have to print them? That's a great question. We're exploring options for both. So nearly all of the units have the readers and the readers available as a PDF. In every unit, the activity books are available as a PDF, and so districts have access to those materials openly through the PDF format. A district can choose to print those if the district wishes to. And then again, we're exploring options for districts to purchase the printed activity books, but for now, again, they're available both digitally as an editable PDF and a downloadable PDF. And again, the majority of the readers for this program are available openly through PDF format. Okay, looking through some other questions. I think it would be great if the Amplify team, there's a great question here for either Susan or Jamie, to give some context on how Amplify decided on the topics presented in the knowledge strands.
That's great. This is Susan. I can take that one. It's a really good question. One of the things that's really important as we talked about this knowledge-rich curriculum is accessing and exposing kids to a range of topics, including history and geography and science topics and literature topics. And so that's what we really did, is took a look at what do kids need to have in high school and beyond, that we can really start to build that background knowledge, vocabulary exposure to in the early grades, and how can we do it in a coherent system. And so that was sort of the thinking behind it. We want to make sure that we can prepare students when they move into middle school and beyond to actually get into a history class or in a science class and be able to approach that text really confidently in terms of how to work with that text, both in reading and writing and speaking. And so that's where we built backwards from that and sort of developed this coherent sequence.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. I think we have another question asking about a year-long scope and sequence. I think there's kind of two parts to this. One, Amplify, again, is going to be similar to other THL publishers, working on a series for adoption and implementation. And in that series, we'll be giving some recommendations about how to adopt and or pick up and use the materials midstream. So if you are working with districts that want to adopt in the spring, or maybe just want to adopt, one or two units, Amplify is working to address some of those through that venue. And then, yes, there is going to be a full year scope and sequence. I'm not sure if Jamie previewed this, but there are currently some topical high level scope and sequence that you can see based on unit topics and themes. You can also find this in terms of a pacing guide that is available for the year. And then I think specifically, probably Donna, you were asking about the TEKS year-long scope and sequence. And so we're working to make that available. It is not something we have currently yet, but are working to develop that for the course of a year. And then we have another question just about the webinar series in general. I think the webinar series, or the three-part webinar series around adoption and implementation, will really be driven by the Amplify team. They will be leading that series, and then we're of course working on a plan with education service centers so that education service centers are able to turnkey some of those trainings and materials for interested districts and schools. All right, team. It looks like we've worked to answer all questions. I know we have just a couple more minutes, so I think TEA and Amplify will stay on for a few more minutes in case there are additional questions. But that does conclude our presentation. We're really excited to have you on the call today. I'm really eager for you to dive into the materials and go deep into Unit 1 and appreciate your time. I know some of you may be joining the afternoon call, so you'll have the opportunity to hear the session again this afternoon if that is helpful. And again, we'll stay on for just another minute or two to answer any lingering questions. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry, just got a question about when will the next sort of round of webinars begin? We do not have a date yet, but we're working to pin down those dates soon. So, kind of our cadence has roughly been somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks after the materials launch, which is, again, materials launch today for Unit 1, but we're working to have those specific dates to you all soon. Thank you for the questions, Donna. One more question is, how many days is Unit 1? Again, that's going to vary unit by unit. Each unit has a slightly different timeline. And then there is available a pacing guide, which gives some information about that for each grade level. In the more global programmatic resources. It doesn't yet have the TEKS alignment in there, but it does give you a sense of how long each unit is for every grade level. All right, team, we appreciate your time today. This will conclude our webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar series. Thank you so much. Have a good day.